Welcome to Coffee and RPGs. My name is Solomon Kane. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We have a lot of RPGs to cover, so if you guys have your beverage of choice, let's cover the list together. Cheers to you guys. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. The first game I'm going to talk about obviously is going to be Cyberpunk 2077. And I go on over to PCGamer.com because I think they did a really good job at covering what we should expect in the game. So let me just kind of go briefly over some of the stuff that you may or may not know. So first of all, Cyberpunk 2077 will be released on September 17th, 2020 for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Google Stadia. And on PC, it will be out for Steam and GOG. And one of the main reasons why I think a lot of people really want to play this game is because the company itself, CD Projekt Red. And in the past, they have been remembered for creating games, but also giving its consumers a lot of content for its money, kind of going against the grain of the status quo with what you see with microtransactions from EA and Activision. So there's a lot of people who really respect this company for those choices. So 1 or 2 weeks ago, we did cover a little bit earlier about sort of the customizations that you could do. And it does go on to read that you can select a gender and customize their character. Customization can include depictions of breasts, buttocks, and genitalia, as well as various sizes and combinations of such. It also goes on to read that you can also change your stats. They will be basics like strength and intelligence, but also a cool stat that determines how well you handle stress, which affects the weapon accuracy. So again, very basic and standard RPG elements. You could also change your backstory, referred to as life path, choosing from Nomad, Corpo, or Street Kid, which each has their own origin story and starting location in the world. Each life path unlocks unique dialogue options that can alter how quests plays out as well. So when I read this kind of reminds me of the Mass Effect series, because you too can select your past, ranging from coming from a military or a family of a military background, a spacer, you know, again, a kid on the streets and stuff like that. And that too actually changed some of the dialogues between the characters that you interacted with in the game. So with regarding romance, they go on to say that with Geralt, you had a character whose sexuality was very well defined by the novels and the short stories and the previous games. But in this one, it's up to you to decide. We've got NPCs that are gay, we've got NPCs that are bi, we've got NPCs that are straight, because we want them to feel real and that they have preferences as well. And I actually really like that. One of the biggest problems that I had with Fallout 4 is that essentially everybody was bi. And I get why they did that, but it made the game feel less immersive in my opinion. But whereas Fallout New Vegas, you actually had characters that had their own preferences. If I had a choice, I would have loved to romance Veronica in Fallout New Vegas, but I couldn't because she's a lesbian. And instead of complaining about why the developers didn't allow me to romance her in the game, I actually thought that the game was more immersive because of that. So instead of pandering to everybody, I think something like this actually gives the game a lot more depth and realism. And by the way, you can't romance Keanu's character, so if you're just wondering. And lastly, one of the things that really make the game stand out is their crowd technology that they are using. So if you look at the previews and the trailers, you actually see a whole world of a bustling cyberpunk metropolis. And this technology that they're utilizing actually makes each individual, or at least gives the illusion of each individual there with its own sort of individuality of doing things around the world. I guess kind of similar to what you see in Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 and 5. More or less, but apparently this is going to make things better. So I'm really excited about playing this game with that in mind, in hopes to experience a new level of realism. And heading on over to Gematsu.com, the second game I wanted to talk about is called The Ascent, and it's a sci-fi action RPG announced for the Xbox Series X, Xbox One, and PC via Steam. But if you do get it for the Xbox version, you also get the smart delivery option as well. But it does go on to read that The Ascent is a solo and co-op action RPG sets on Velez, or Vels, a packed cyberpunk world. You play as a worker enslaved by the company that owns you and everyone else in your district, but the Ascent group, the largest mega corporation on the planet, shuts down for unknown reasons, causing the automated security systems to go haywire. Rival corporations are trying to force appropriation, and crime syndicates are looking to boost their black market augmentation trade. You must take up arms to stop them from seizing control and embark on a new mission to find out what started it all. So some of the key features include loot and shoot, but I don't know if this actually means if they're trying to incorporate looter-shooter mechanics such as you see in Destiny 2, Borderlands, and Anthem, more or less maybe, but there's going to be customization, which is pretty important for RPGs, but the feature that I'm looking the most forward to is the co-op feature of the game. Ever since I started to play Streets of Rage 4, which is a very fantastic game, and being able to play with other people and your friends, I've really wanted to play other co-op games as well. And if you like, you could definitely head on over to their Steam page for more information, and links to these will be down in the pinned comment section below. So the next game I wanted to talk about is Gamedec, for obvious reasons, maybe, more or less. It's a crowdfunded game with a goal of $50,000, but it ended up getting over $170,000 instead. But they are describing themselves as a single-player, non-combat cyberpunk isometric RPG. So kind of very similar to the previous game that we talked about, but this has no combat whatsoever, if that's sort of your thing. You are a Gamedec, a private detective who solves crimes inside virtual worlds. The decisions you make will alter your character's traits and impact the course of the game, but cases are riddled with dilemmas and rarely clear-cut. And it goes on to read, as a detective, you must solve crimes in both the real and virtual world, so there will be a duality in terms of those, yet no case has a simple solution. Gamedec gives you the freedom to approach cases from multiple angles, but be careful. For better or worse, every decision you make will have consequences for your character and their reputation in the real and virtual worlds. And they seem to also emphasize that this is a very moral, ambiguous game. In Gamedec, there is no black and white. Some options will feel right, while others might surprise you. Each decision you make will shape the game world and your character's personality. The game never judges your actions, but can you live with your choices? Admittedly, that sounds very stressful. Maybe very draining if you really care about your character's choices. I don't know, but it sounds pretty awesome nonetheless. So in terms of game mechanics, there are things called aspects and professions, but professions is what I really wanted to focus on. Aspects unlock professions, but be wary. Becoming a hacker can make life easier by exploiting bugs or programs in the virtual worlds, but it may make NPCs who know about your actions distrust you. Other professions that place emphasis on being empathetic would be a better choice for players who want to increase their charisma with NPCs and encourage them to open up. Gamedec currently has 30 unlockable professions. And if you're curious, they also have their own Steam page as well, with the tags RPG, Cyberpunk, Sci-Fi, Isometric, and Futuristic, and plethora of other information as well. Another game I'm looking forward to as well comes from MMORPG.com. New MMORPG Corepunk announced. Beta signups are live, and this is an article published back in December 10th of 2019. But it also reads, a top-down isometric RPG self-described as, quote, part Cyberpunk, part Diablo, part Ultima Online, end quote. Cyberpunk features a seamless world with fog of war. Additionally, professions, PvP, battlegrounds, dungeons, monsters in unique camps, guilds, farms, quests, and rich lore are also promised. And that fog of war part is actually really interesting, considering a lot of isometric games out there kind of did away with that. But it does go on to read, in PvP, the top-down view of fog of war give rise to new tactics and strategies. For example, ambushing, rushing from out of nowhere, and luring foes into gang hidden in the shadows. It will also feature day and night cycles, as well as a healer tank DPS roles with hybrid variations. Also, if you are curious, there's another article that says, according to the team, the business model is the most popular request they receive. The team announced that they're going with a buy-to-play plus cosmetics model with a battle pass in-game shop as part of the cosmetics as well. The team notes that they will not sell any boosters or anything that will affect gameplay. Cosmetic items will only be bought in the in-game cash shop or through the battle pass system. Next, we head on over to MMOculture.com for all the mobile fans out there. Code T a new Cyberpunk mobile game teased by NetEase. So unfortunately, we actually don't know a whole lot about this game other than the fact that it's going to be a Cyberpunk game for the mobile platform. And like I said, even though I'm not really a mobile guy myself, with the exception of 2 or 3 games out there, I'd like to make this this list for everybody. But it does go on to read that according to NetEase, Code T is a simulation game where crime and darkness are hiding behind the flashing neon lights of the futuristic settings. Here, players will become bounty hunters to maneuver among different forces and make their way to become quote-unquote legends. And again, I don't know what that means, but here is a quick preview of the current 4 characters found on the Chinese pre-registration website, with the first 2 bounty hunters and the rest labeled as informants. The authors suggest that these characters are, well, just that, character types rather than classes, and admittedly, a lot of these characters do look pretty awesome, with this one being my favorite. But to those of you who want to play a Cyberpunk game but only have a mobile platform, I guess you got something to look forward to as well, and I'll keep you posted as we get more information about this. Next, we head on over to MMORPG.com. Cyberpunk Dungeon Crawler Conglomerate 451 leaves early access, and this is an article that was published back in February 21st of 2020. It goes on saying Conglomerate 451 embraces its grid-based dungeon crawling RPG roots, offering a variety of technologies to explore and upgrade. Roguelike elements add a weight to the smallest decisions. For your agents to make it out alive, they must leverage everything from hacking and equipable agent skills to the strategic use of tools developed by your personal R&D department. Some of the key features include managing your resources, make use of your own personal R&D department to research advanced technology, pain and trauma system, even the smallest wounds can have a lasting impact, drugs and disorders, buy synthetic drugs to temporarily empower your agents with the risk that they develop mental disorders, which is wow, that's pretty hardcore. And if you die in the game, each mission could be your last thanks to the agent permadeath. Consider every move, because if the agent dies in battle, they will be lost forever. And that's a characteristic that you see in a lot of roguelike games anyway, so no surprise there. You could definitely head on over to their official Steam page, where it has a mostly positive review score, which isn't bad, and has the tags RPG, Indie, Cyberpunk, and Dungeon Crawler as well. And finally, last on this list, we come to a game called Lo-Fi. And the biggest downside, at least in my opinion, about this game is that you need a VR set. But I think that's sort of the point of the game, is to experience it in VR, because it could be very immersive. But because I don't have a VR set, I can't really play it, but maybe this would be a good reason to buy one. But this is their Kickstarter page. They were asking $60,000 as the goal, and they ended up with $108,000, which is always nice. But it does go on to read, welcome to the next generation of cyberpunk virtual reality. Patrol the streets and the skies, solving mysteries, fighting crime, or giving into corruption and your own desires. The choice is yours. And admittedly, the game looks absolutely breathtaking. It looks that's some serious graphics right there. So in terms of the story, Lo-Fi is the street name given to those who cannot merge with the platform, a ubiquitous virtual reality simulation where most of the population now live their lives. You are a Lo-Fi police officer that has recently been transferred to a particularly crime-ridden section of City Block 303. The only inhabitants of note in your jurisdiction are the other Lo-Fi and human intelligence, or below, artificial life forms who have remained among the citizens after the AI singularity. So if I remember correctly, I believe the singularity as it pertains to this is the moment of time when computers became self-aware, thus becoming AI. It goes on to read, moral gray areas can be exploited via player choice in most situations through actions or dialogue trees. You can, for example, choose to take a bribe rather than arrest a criminal, or even frame a third party for personal gain. So again, like we were talking about with the previous game, Gamedec, which also has a lot of moral ambiguity, looks like this game also does too. And that concludes today's episode of the top Cyberpunk RPGs. If you made it with me so far, I do appreciate it because the watch time does help with the algorithms. If you haven't done so already, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell notification too, as those also help with the algorithms and the channel as well, considering I'm still a relatively small and new channel anyways. But in any event, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, have a blessed night, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers again, everyone.